Is that all you got? Seriously, I'm a little disappointed. No, it's not funny. I flew all the way here from Los Angeles. It took me an entire freaking day to get here. And I get this Pavlovian dog response because you feel like you're supposed to be polite. No, that's even worse. No, you guys, this is not funny. I am one of the most important people you're gonna see on this stage today. And by far the best looking. That's not funny either. What are you smiling about? Look at you. No, you want to come up here and take me off the stage? By all means. Jump, I'll wait. Naperville. I heard Arthur talking about what a great town this is. This town sucks. The only people that think Naperville is a great town are people that have never been anywhere else. Then it's a great town. No problem. I think the town sucks. In this building, Arthur called me and he said, Eric, we've got this great venue. You're gonna love the look of it. Are you kidding me? Salvation Army not available, maybe? I played in bigger buildings and nicer buildings than this in Biloxi, Mississippi. Naperville. I see what you can wipe that look off your face, lady. Because I know what you're thinking. I'm busy tonight. Forget about it. All right, I'm glad this part is over. I really, really am. Now, I gotta be honest. I've been doing this for a long time. I told Arthur earlier when I told him what I wanted to do, I wanted to give him a heads up so he didn't send security out here and drag me off the stage. Not that that hasn't happened before either, but I wanted to give him a heads up. And I told him what I was gonna do. And I said, he said, are you comfortable doing it? I said, well, I'm really comfortable making people hate me. I've just never done it in an environment like this before. So here we are. Now, I want to ask a question, though. Out of all of you in this room, is there anybody here, and be honest, is there anybody here that wanted to see security come and drag me off the stage? A few of you. I still got it. Damn. It's kind of like a golf swing or riding a bike. Once you figure it out, it's hard to lose it. But had I continued and gone further in trying to make you all hate me, until the point where somebody actually did come out from the back and drag me backstage and maybe have me arrested and spend the night in Naperville's finest jail. If I would have done that, then the very next person that would have come out here would have more than likely gotten a standing ovation. And that means I would have done my job. Because if Arthur would have called me up 4 or 5 months ago when he did and said, look, Eric, we've got this thing called TED Talk. It's a lot of fun. It's great opportunity. Some really smart people. You'll hear ideas. You'll gain experience. But I don't want to do it the way we normally do it. See, what I want to do, Eric, is I want to format my TEDx Naperville show or event to be like a professional wrestling event. I don't want people to think. I want people to feel. That would have been right up my alley, because that's what I do. Or at least that's what I've done for the last 30 years. About 2006, I wrote a book. It came out, I think we made New York Times bestseller list for about, 45 minutes. We barely made it at number 16, but we made it. And it sure as hell sounds great when I do something like this. And I can talk about being on the New York Times bestseller list. I don't always tell people that it only lasted for about 45 minutes, but I thought I'd share that with you. The book really followed my journey and what I learned in 30 years of being in the professional wrestling industry. People don't realize just how enduring professional wrestling is in our culture. One of the first people I ever worked for, Verne Gagne. Now, anybody in this room that's over 45 or 50 years old may remember Verne Gagne. Verne was a professional wrestling promoter based out of Minneapolis. He hired me. For what reason, I have no idea, but he did. And Verne used to promote a lot here in Chicago. He had wrestlers like Dick the Bruiser, and Nick Bockwinkel, and Ray Stevens, and the Crusher, and he was a big fixture here. They had wrestling matches at Wrigley Field, for crying out loud. And wrestling has been around for a long, long time. In fact, when it comes to content, and the content that we've all become familiar with throughout our lives, professional wrestling and news are the two most enduring forms of content that there are. And before the night is over, I'm going to try to convince you that they're far more similar than you think. Now, one of the things that I learned working for Verne was, in fact, it was one of the first things he taught me, I remember, because for a long time, Verne didn't want me anywhere near the back door of professional wrestling, the backstage area. That was off limits. It was a secret. It was kind of like magicians. They like to keep their secrets. So he didn't share a lot of things with me. But one of the things he did share with me as I started producing for him was that when it comes to the audience, it doesn't really matter if they love a wrestler or hate them, as long as they feel passionately one way or the other. Business would be good. I want you to remember that. As long as the audience feels passionately one way or the other, business would be good. Now, one of the things I talked about in the book is professional wrestling. In fact, right here in Chicago, it was one of the first weekly network television shows back in the 1950s, at the beginning of the television age. And it went from there to being the #1 local television show long before cable came around. In any city in the United States, professional wrestling was the #1 most watched form of content in any given market. Cable television came along sometime in the 70s, 80s, whenever it was. Professional wrestling became, and still is to this day, the most watched form of entertainment every single week on cable television. The digital age, which is only a few years old, the WWE has 25 million fans around the world. 25 million fans. They have a market cap of $6 billion, and they trade on the New York Stock Exchange for right around $75, $78, depending on the day. How did it get so big? How did professional wrestling become such a big part of our culture? It's simple. They don't make you think. It's not like a TED Talk. They make you feel. Okay. What does that have to do with the news media that we see today? What is with the news today? All of us are exposed to it, right? I mean, most of us, if you're like me at least, I'm kind of addicted to it, but I try as hard as I can not to watch it because it upsets me. And it wasn't until after I got out of the wrestling business and I retired that I realized that the news media and professional wrestling use much the same formula, and politicians as well. They don't want you to think, they want you to feel. And as long as you feel passionately one way or the other, business is good. And right now, business is very, very good for the news media that covers politics because of that. And what happened? It never used to be that way. Now, I'm 63 years old. I've been around for a little while, and I've always been interested in current events. As I got older, politics. And I don't recall seeing it as bad as it is today. At least the news media back in the 60s, the 70s, and the 80s, at least they tried to pretend that they were objective. They tried to pretend at least, and most of them did a great job, they tried to pretend at least that there was an integrity within journalism and lines they wouldn't cross, things they wouldn't do. They would report both sides of the stories and let the audience or the reader decide how they felt about a given issue or personality or politician. But that's gone. And why is that? Why did that happen? It seems to me, at least, that it's really just begun happening over the last 10 years, 8 years, is when it's gotten really bad. Where what you're watching on television isn't so much informing you and making you think, it's making you feel and pissing you off, more often than not, because that's what they want to do. It's called cheap heat in the wrestling business. It's easy. Just like me coming out here and making fun of people, or inviting this gentleman to come up here and try to drag me off the stage if he was man enough, that type of thing, that's called cheap heat. It's easy to get people to react to that kind of thing. A lot easier to get them to react to that than asking them to think. So that's what they do. When cable television came around, I worked for Ted Turner, by the way, for about 7 years. One of the best times of my life. Ted Turner launched CNN. At that time, first cable news out, 24 hours, international news. That was Ted's vision. Ted believed he could bring the world closer together as a result of that. But here's what happened. Fox TV followed him. MSNBC followed the business model. And what they realized is it's a hell of a lot cheaper to put 3 or 4 talking heads in the studio talking about the news and giving opinions about the news than it is going out and actually reporting it. So now what we see across the boards, and this is a bipartisan problem. This is a media issue. This isn't a one party or the other issue, because they're all guilty of it. So now what you see when you're looking for information are talking heads arguing. No matter what it is, they're going to find a way to argue about it. And if they don't have something to argue about, they're going to reach in a little bag of tricks. They're going to pull out a poll, because there's more polls now than there are anything else. There's a new poll every day. And it will tell you whatever you want it to tell you. It falls into the liars, numbers can lie and liars use numbers. That's a poll. Because those polls provide talking points for the agenda of any particular network. Give somebody something to argue about. It's kind of crazy when you think about it. What if I told you, and I mean this sincerely, what if I told you right now that there is a very good chance many of you in this room will vote for a professional wrestler to be the next president of the United States? You laugh? Donald Trump. Donald Trump is in the WWE Hall of Fame. Let that sink in. Now, he wasn't a professional wrestler. But again, when we're talking about the power of media and how it makes you feel instead of how it makes you think, just recognize that not only is the current president of the United States in the WWE Hall of Fame, his member of his cabinet, Linda McMahon, the former CEO of WWE, and a member of President Trump's cabinet, who heads up the Small Business Administration, she's right there with him. It's not that far-fetched. Just think about that. Now, my goal here wasn't really to educate you about professional wrestling, although I'll talk your ear off later on over a cocktail if you'd like to after the show. But my goal here is that hopefully the next time you're watching the news and you find yourself getting angry about what you see, that you realize that that's exactly the way they want you to feel. They don't want you to think. They want you to feel, just like Vern Gagne did, just like Vince McMahon did, just like I did for 30 years. And like I did when I first came out here and challenged this gentleman to jump on stage and knock me out. wasn't trying to make them think, I was trying to make them feel. And if we recognize that we're inundated daily with information designed not to make us think but make us feel, once you recognize it's a little bit like an alcoholic or a drug addict. You can't fix it till you know you've got the problem and you're willing to admit it. And I'm asking, I ask myself, I do this to myself every single day. I get up out of bed, I have a cup of coffee, I take my dog for a hike. I've got a great dog, by the way. Her name's Nikki. I wish she could be here. But after I'm done hiking with my dog, I sit down and I catch up on what's going on, in the news for the day. And I remind myself before I turn on the television to not let them make me angry. Because the minute you get angry, you quit thinking. The minute all of your energy is focused on what you feel, you stop thinking. And by the way, if I'm right, and you all do vote for a former professional wrestler to become the next president of the United States, it might just be history repeating itself, and it might not be all that bad. Because believe it or not, Abraham Lincoln, one of this country's greatest presidents, was at one time, before he became a lawyer, a professional wrestler. It can happen. Thank you all very much.